She has an important question about a family member's death. Hi, Janet. How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing great.
Share with us what occurred. Is this with your husband?
Yes, my husband, we took him to the doctor on the 4th of July of last year. They told us at the ER that he had cancer. We well, how bad? They told us it was stage 4, and it was pretty much everywhere in his body. So they sent him home on the 16th to die, and on the 20th he died. And, you know, I did CPR. We got the paramedics here. They worked on him 45 minutes at my house, knowing he was dead before they even transported him to the hospital. And then once they got him to the hospital, they put him on life support. After 10 minutes, they got a heartbeat, and then, you know, he was dead, brain dead, and, you know, that was the hardest thing I ever did is take him off life support. But shouldn't his regular doctors have known he had cancer? I mean, it don't just pop up overnight.
Well, that would require a review of all of his medical records prior to the time he went to the doctor and, as you say, was diagnosed with cancer and died shortly thereafter, unfortunately. And then in most of those cancer cases, it involves a misdiagnosis of cancer. And it usually, to have a successful case, there needs to be a certain length of time between the misdiagnosis and then the cancer that arises, because the cancer can develop over a certain length of time. Most of the time you have a misdiagnosis, and shortly thereafter then the cancer develops, and then you end up in a causation problem where if the treatment, even if they had treated the cancer, then it wouldn't have made a difference in the outcome, because it was such a short time between the misdiagnosis and the cancer developing and then the subsequent death. But in your situation, again, you would have to go back and get all the records that he had from the doctors that he had seen, or any other medical facility that he had seen, or who had treated him, and then review them to see if a possible misdiagnosis had been made. And then and as a result of that, then something could have been done to treat the cancer, and where it could have saved his life.
And Sam, how difficult is it to prove negligence on behalf of a doctor?
Well, you mean negligence by a doctor?
By a doctor. I'm sorry.
Well, it's difficult. You have to prove in a medical malpractice case, there are two components mainly. First of all, you've got to prove the negligence, and that is a deviation of the standard of care that's required by the medical community in general. That is the legal definition for medical malpractice in the state of Georgia. Secondly, you've got to show that negligence was the cause of the problem that the person has, and most of the time it comes up in a death case, and you have to show that because of what the doctor did or did not do, or some type of medical personnel did or did not do, was the cause of this injury or death to the patient. And that's a pretty high burden. There's Augusta's a medical community. The jurors that you get are involved in the medical community. It's not as much now as it used to be, and Vic can tell you that, but it's still, people hold physicians in high regard. Most of the time, doctors do good work. But they do make mistakes, and they do make errors in judgments, and that cause serious problems, and people should have some type of recourse when those types of mistakes are made. So we review a lot of medical malpractice cases, and there are not many of them that we take, because the time and expense involved in pursuing those is significant. You have to get an expert right in the very beginning to review the records, and then give you an affidavit to say that the physician was negligent, or the medical personnel at the hospital was negligent, before you can even get into court. And so there's a lot of work on the front end that is required by review of the records, hiring the experts, and the experts, they charge, you know, they are in business to review records. So the attorney, such as what we do, has to make a decision as to whether or not they feel like the recovery through a settlement or a jury verdict an ultimate award will justify the time and expense involved in pursuing the case. So there are a lot of components that go into a medical negligence case, but first things you have to do is gather the records and then have them reviewed by a medical expert. We have a legal nurse consultant that we work with who helps us with that in talking to calls, screening the calls, and then giving us her opinion as to whether or not we think this is a case that we can go forward on.